The easiest, fastest legal path to the United States. TN visa needs no application, has minimal requirements. Find the image and table from this chapter in the print edition or at econamericas.substack.com. Whenever Canadians express an interest in making a home in the United States, my first recommendation is that they examine the TN visa. Its genesis was the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which entered into force in 1994, and the chief advantage to this status is that it has no application prior to arrival at the border. As someone who avoids bureaucracy like the plague, this was music to my ears. The TN also permits a 3-year stay, renewable indefinitely, and requires no sponsorship from an employer, just a job offer letter. As explained by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, quote, the TN non-immigrant classification permits qualified Canadian and Mexican citizens to seek temporary entry into the United States to engage in business activities at a professional level, unquote. There are complications that make the TN inadvisable as a substitute for permanent residence. However, it is a way to get settled and working in the United States. After dipping your feet in the water, you can decide whether permanent residence is the right move for you. The immigration system that is not. I will do my best to give you an accurate sketch of the TN process and requirements. However, keep in mind that the U.S. immigration system is a profound mess. Tens of millions of illegal immigrants are living testament to enormous non-compliance and arbitrary enforcement. Even if the laws were enforced, they would leave the observer scratching his head. The diversity visa lottery, for example, makes about as much sense as you might expect from the name. Why immigration authorities should deliberately make migration flows more random is lost on me. Even though I'm an Anglo-Celtic, white male, and native English speaker, I garnered my green card permanent residence through the diversity lottery. The State Department simply pulled my name out of the hat and not someone else's. The disorder in the US system, coupled with a vast bureaucracy, means you will come across a variety of different border officials. Some relaxed and accommodating, and some itching for a fight. Some will scrutinize all your documents and try to humiliate you by splitting hairs, while many will not have a clue what the requirements are. The on-the-ground agents are hardly to blame. A review of State Department and USCIS websites can often lead to conflicting and confusing advice. One does well to know the rules and, if necessary, as politely as possible, explain them to the specific agent handling your entry, although his opinion is what matters. Take it from someone who has learned the hard way. Standing up for your privacy or rights at the US border will win you no friends. Rather, comporting yourself with a peaceful, patient demeanor helps. The must-haves. So, back to the TN visa. This is for salaried employees in the United States within about 50 specified occupations, see Table 2. In other words, to be granted this status, you need proof of Canadian citizenship, a job offer letter, your qualification or qualifications for employment, the processing fee, US $50 plus $6 per job. Many of the requirements are modest. For example, an economist simply needs a bachelor's degree in economics. Further, what an economist does is often in the eye of the beholder. So long as the letter has the required features, such as the anticipated employment term, the company letterhead, and a job description that fits the job title, there should be no problems. Ideally, the employer will state an anticipated 3-year period, after which you can bring a fresh letter to border officials and renew your visa for another 3 years. Once you know the details of the job offer, I recommend preparing the letter yourself and underlining the necessary elements so your supervisor can sign it on behalf of the employing firm. In 2011, when struggling at the Ambassador Bridge between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan, a border agent handed me this. I returned to Canada and made sure my job offer letter had all the listed attributes. Do it yourself. You need not be intimidated by this process, nor do you need to pay for an online service to help you. I recommend paying for other immigration help, such as a vaccination waiver, but the TN visa is child's play by comparison. That is perhaps because US officials want more TN workers. After all, they are educated taxpayers who have to return to Canada if they lose their jobs. All gain and no pain for government officials. Washington, D.C. is more than happy to have such Canadians come and plug themselves into the U.S. tax system as salaried participants, which means direct taxation of their labor. That is in contrast to independent contractors and entrepreneurs who can lessen their tax burdens in many ways. TN workers are also less likely to collect Social Security later in life. The purpose of the program might turn some people off the idea, except that the taxes in the Great White North are even more punitive. You pick your poison. My recommendation is to bring the required items for your TN to a US land border or one of the 9 airports with US processing on Canadian soil. That way, if there's any problem, you can return home and make the updates with few difficulties. While there is little likelihood of being sent home after landing at an airport on US soil, the officials can give you headaches and make you pay extra fees for processing. Again, I speak from experience. If you have concerns about this process, please do not hesitate to contact my Econ Americas team. If you're adamant about getting an immigration attorney to help you, perhaps for a more complicated case, such as when you are bringing family members, I can provide a competent attorney I've worked with personally. Transitioning beyond TN status. If you settle in the United States and decide you want to stay without depending on an employer, perhaps because you would like to start your own business or buy your own home, you will almost certainly need professional help. That is unless you have the time to wade through and learn the paperwork. The big problem with going it alone, as I did initially with my green card, is that immigration officials will be inclined to trip you up and use the information you provide against you. You will also not know the keywords they are looking for to satisfy their criteria. Further, much of the information available is cryptic to the layman, and good luck getting USCIS to respond to your calls. In my experience, immigrant communities share with each other what works and what does not, regardless of the words that might be written in any law or regulation. These communities have navigated and learned the system by trial and error. This reminds me of how people learn the rules of rugby. Few people ever read the rule book, which is always changing anyway. Rather, newbies learn from those who have played the game and watch how they avoid getting stopped by the referee. Tragically, prospective immigrants without such networks often find themselves reading through discussion forums in an attempt to decipher what they are meant to do. This easily becomes a case of the blind leading the blind. On a positive note, for the TN visa, you will not need any more information than is provided in this chapter. Further, assuming you have a suitable employment offer and your documents are organized, you can have your visa at the border within minutes. As far as what happens if you lose your employment, that is cryptic. Technically, you do not have to leave the country, but how quickly that has to be is debated in online forums. You can be sure no one is rushing out to deport Canadians who have recently lost their jobs and are preparing to return home. However, you will not be able to return to the United States on the TN visa, at least not lawfully, since your employment no longer applies. Further, you will have to be out of the country before your visa expires. Otherwise, you will join the millions of illegal overstayers.